The silence in the car was a physical thing, a heavy blanket of unspoken words and secondhand smoke from the cigar my future father-in-law was puffing on. Richard Harrington glanced at me from the driver's seat of his pristine vintage convertible, the kind of car that costs more than my entire college education. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed, his jaw set in a line of bored disapproval that I had come to recognize as his default expression. He took another long draw from the cigar, the cherry glowing like a miniature star in the twilight, before speaking. "I hope you understand the gravity of what's happening tomorrow, son." The word son felt like a borrowed suit, ill-fitting and temporary. "I'm not just giving you my daughter. I'm giving you the Harrington name. Don't tarnish it." I gripped the leather of my own seat, the engagement ring I had spent 3 years saving for feeling suddenly cheap and insignificant in my pocket. "Yes, sir, I understand completely." I had been practicing that tone of voice for months, the perfect blend of respect and confidence that he seemed to demand. I was marrying his daughter Chloe, the woman I had worshipped from the moment I first saw her across a crowded university library. Tomorrow was our wedding day, a 300-person affair at the Harrington Country Estate, an event the local society pages had been breathlessly anticipating for a year. I was a software engineer from a middle-class background, and I had somehow won the heart of a princess. I knew I was lucky. I knew I was out of my depth. What I didn't know was that the entire fairy tale was a meticulously constructed lie, and I was the only one who didn't have a copy of the script. Richard seemed satisfied with my answer and turned his attention back to navigating the winding country roads toward the estate for the rehearsal dinner. I stared out at the blur of autumn trees, my mind replaying the scene from 2 hours earlier, the moment the first crack had appeared in the perfect facade of my life. I had finished work early and decided to surprise Chloe at her bridal suite at the Grand Hotel, bringing her favorite flowers, white peonies, and a small, silly gift, a first edition of her favorite book. I wanted one quiet moment with her before the chaos of the wedding weekend officially began. As I approached the suite, I could hear laughter from inside, loud and unrestrained. I smiled, picturing her with her bridesmaids, giddy with anticipation. I paused at the door, my hand raised to knock, when I heard her voice, clear and sharp, cutting through the others. Oh my God, you should have seen his face when he proposed. He was practically weeping. It was adorable, like a little puppy who'd just been given a treat. A wave of giggles followed. I recognized the voice of her maid of honor, Tiffany. Well, he is kind of a puppy, a sweet, loyal, slightly boring golden retriever, but at least he's well trained. The laughter grew louder, crueler. My hand froze, inches from the door. My smile evaporated. "It's not about him, Tiff, you know that. It's about the wedding." Chloe's voice was slick with something I had never heard before, a chilling mixture of arrogance and disdain. "It's about the dress, the party, the pictures. It's about showing everyone that I won. Besides, he's stable. He'll be a good provider. And he worships me, which is the most important thing. He'll never question where I am or who I'm with. He's too grateful that I chose him." The words were like icicles stabbing into my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. This wasn't my Chloe. My Chloe was kind and sweet and loved me for who I was, not for what I could provide or how easily I could be controlled. Another bridesmaid, a woman named Madison, chimed in. "Did you tell him about your bachelorette party in Vegas?" "Tell him? Are you insane?" Chloe scoffed. "I told him we went to a spa and had a quiet girls' weekend. He believes every word I say. He has no idea that I spent the entire weekend with Marco." The name hit me like a physical blow. Marco was Chloe's ex-boyfriend from college, a notoriously wealthy and wild trust fund kid she had always described as a fun mistake. They had supposedly not spoken in years. "I can't believe you did that, Chloe. What if he finds out?" Tiffany's voice was a mix of awe and concern. "He won't find out, and even if he did, what would he do? Cry a little? Write some sad computer code? Please. He'd forgive me in a second because the alternative is losing me, and we all know he can't handle that." She bragged about it. She wasn't ashamed. She was proud. She saw my love not as a gift, but as a tool. My trust wasn't a bond. It was a weakness to be exploited. I stood there in the silent, carpeted hallway of the Grand Hotel, the peonies wilting in my hand, and felt the entire foundation of my world disintegrate. The man who had been standing there a moment before, the happy, trusting fiancé, was gone. In his place was a stranger, someone cold and hollowed out, someone who finally saw the truth with perfect, devastating clarity. I turned and walked away without making a sound. I dropped the flowers and the book in a trash can in the lobby and walked out into the cold afternoon air, my mind a storm of betrayal and rage. They thought I was a puppy. They thought I was weak. They thought I would just take it. A cold, hard resolve began to form in the ruins of my heart. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted, the perfect wedding, the biggest show of her life, and then I was going to burn it all to the ground. Richard pulled the convertible into the long, gravel driveway of the estate, the grand mansion looming before us like a monument to a life I would never have. Showtime, I thought, a bitter smile touching my lips for the first time. The rehearsal dinner was an exercise in surreal torture. I moved through the lavishly decorated marquee on the back lawn of the estate like a ghost, a phantom playing the part of the happy groom. I smiled, I shook hands, I accepted congratulations from people whose names I immediately forgot. Chloe was radiant in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She floated around the party, a queen in her court, her laughter echoing in the soft evening air. Every time she looked at me, her eyes sparkling with what I now knew was manufactured affection, I felt a fresh wave of cold fury. She drifted over to me, wrapping her arms around my neck and kissing me deeply. The guests cooed and applauded. I forced myself not to recoil. I tasted champagne and lies on her lips. "I missed you today," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "I was so bored without you." "I had to go into the office," I lied, the deception coming surprisingly easily. "Last-minute project. You know how it is." She pouted prettily. "You work too hard. But don't worry, after tomorrow, you'll have a new full-time job, taking care of me." She winked and squeezed my hand before flitting off to talk to her cousins. Taking care of her. That's what this was all about. I was a transaction, a merger, a means to an end. My love was just the currency she was using to purchase the life she felt she was owed. I watched her across the lawn, laughing with her bridesmaids, Tiffany and Madison, the same women who had laughed at my expense just hours before. They glanced over at me and whispered behind their hands, their smiles laced with pity and condescension. They were all in on the joke. The golden retriever had no idea he was about to be put on a very short leash. My own family looked completely out of place in this sea of old money and casual arrogance. My mother, a retired school teacher, was clutching her small purse like a life raft, while my father, a plumber, was locked in a painfully awkward conversation with one of Chloe's uncles about the stock market. They were so proud of me. They thought I had made it, that I had secured a future beyond their wildest dreams. The thought of their impending disappointment was the only thing that gave me a pang of genuine pain. I needed proof. It wasn't enough for me to know the truth. For my plan to work, everyone had to know it. I needed undeniable, irrefutable evidence of her betrayal. While Chloe was busy charming a group of her father's business partners, I discreetly made my way over to Tiffany. She was standing alone by the champagne fountain, scrolling through her phone. "Tiffany," I said, my voice friendly and relaxed. "You look amazing tonight." She looked up, startled, then gave me a tight, insincere smile. "Oh, Alex, thanks. You too." "Chloe is just glowing, isn't she?" "I'm the luckiest guy in the world," I said, laying the sincerity on thick. "I just wish I could have seen some of the bachelorette party fun." Chloe was so secretive about it, said she wanted to keep it a surprise. Tiffany's smile faltered. She shifted her weight, suddenly uncomfortable. "Oh, you know, it was just silly girl stuff. Spa treatments, a little bit of dancing, nothing too crazy." Her inability to look me in the eye was all the confirmation I needed. She was a terrible liar. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "Come on, Tiff. I know Chloe. Her version of a little dancing is legendary. You guys must have taken a million pictures. I'd love to see them sometime, just to see her happy. I've never seen her as happy as she's been this past week." I made sure my eyes were wide and earnest, the picture of a clueless, loving fiancé. Tiffany hesitated, glancing over at Chloe, who was now laughing at something one of her uncles had said. I pressed my advantage. I'm putting together a little surprise for her for the reception tomorrow. A slideshow of her life. I have plenty of pictures from when she was a kid, but I'd love to include some from this past week. It would mean the world to her, and to me. The lie was audacious, but it was couched in the language of devotion, a language they all expected me to speak. I saw the conflict in Tiffany's eyes. On one hand, loyalty to Chloe. On the other, the chance to be part of a grand romantic gesture. Her ego won. "That's so sweet, Alex," she said, her voice softening. "Okay, but you can't tell Chloe I showed you. She'd kill me." "Of course not. Our little secret." She pulled out her phone, and after a moment of scrolling, her face lit up. "Here. Look." She turned the screen toward me. It was a group photo of the bridesmaids in a nightclub, neon lights flashing around them, but my eyes were drawn to the background. In a dimly lit booth behind them, a woman who was unmistakably Chloe was kissing a man who was unmistakably Marco. His arm was wrapped around her waist, his hand possessively on her hip. It wasn't a drunken mistake. It was intimate. It was passionate. It was a betrayal, captured in pixels. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face a mask of pleasant interest. "Wow, she looks like she's having fun. Who's that guy with her?" "Oh," Tiffany said, snatching the phone back a little too quickly. "That's just some random guy. You know how Vegas is." "Can you send me that one?" I asked, my voice casual. "And any others you think would be good for the slideshow. I'll text you my email." She nodded, clearly flustered, and eager to end the conversation. "Sure, Alex. Whatever you need." As I walked away, a cold, triumphant feeling washed over me. I had the first piece of my arsenal, and I knew exactly how I was going to use it. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. That night, I lay awake in my sterile hotel room, the city lights of a town I barely knew painting stripes across the ceiling. Sleep was impossible. My mind was a battlefield of past, present, and future. I replayed every moment of my 3-year relationship with Chloe, but now viewed through the clarifying lens of betrayal. The red flags were suddenly blindingly obvious. The way she would casually mock my choice of clothes or music, always framed as a playful joke. The way she insisted we create a joint bank account for wedding expenses, into which my parents had deposited a significant portion of their life savings, while her parents had contributed a smaller token amount. The way she would talk about her future, always using I instead of we. "I want to live in a house with a pool. I want to travel to Europe every summer." I had always been a footnote in the story she was writing for herself. I got out of bed and opened my laptop. My email pinged. An attachment from Tiffany. The subject line read, "Vegas fun." Shh. I opened it. There were dozens of photos. Most were innocuous shots of them drinking, dancing, and posing. But scattered among them were the ones that mattered. Chloe and Marco in the nightclub booth. Chloe and Marco laughing by a hotel pool, his hand on her thigh. Chloe wearing what looked like his button-down shirt and nothing else, holding a champagne flute on a hotel balcony, the Vegas skyline glittering behind her. And then, the crown jewel. It was a video, only 30 seconds long. It was shaky, clearly filmed on a phone by someone who was laughing. Chloe was standing on a chair in the middle of their hotel suite, holding a bottle of champagne like a microphone. Her bridesmaids were cheering her on. "To my sweet, boring golden retriever back home." She slurred, her voice dripping with celebratory contempt. "Thank you for funding the best weekend of my life, and a special thank you to Marco for reminding me what a real man feels like." The room erupted in whoops and applause. Chloe took a long swig from the bottle, a triumphant smirk on her face. Tiffany's voice could be heard from behind the camera. "You are a terrible person, Chloe Harrington, and I love you for it." Chloe blew a kiss at the camera. "He'll never know, and tomorrow I'll be Mrs. Alex Davenport, and the real fun can begin." I watched the video 3 times. The audio was crystal clear. Her words were unambiguous. This wasn't just evidence of cheating. This was a confession. This was a character assassination, delivered by her own hand. I downloaded the video and all the incriminating photos, saving them to a secure, encrypted hard drive. I then went to work. I spent the next 4 hours creating my surprise for the wedding reception. It wasn't a slideshow, it was a masterpiece of righteous fury. I intercut the photos of Chloe and Marco with screenshots of transactions from our joint wedding account, a $10,000 charge at a designer boutique in Vegas, a $5,000 bar tab at the nightclub, a $15,000 charge for the hotel suite I now knew she had shared with her ex-boyfriend. All paid for with the money my parents had given us for our future. I overlaid her triumphant speech from the video, her cruel words echoing over the images of her lavish betrayal. I ended the video with a simple, stark text on a black screen. "Congratulations, Chloe. You won." When I was finished, the sun was beginning to rise. I felt exhausted, but also strangely exhilarated. The hollowed-out feeling in my chest had been replaced by a white-hot sense of purpose. I emailed the finished video file to my cousin, a freelance video editor named Leo, with a single instruction: be at the Harrington estate tomorrow at 2 p.m. Go to the AV booth. You'll be swapping out the official wedding slideshow with this file. Wait for my signal. The signal will be me not being there. I then wrote 2 letters. One was for Chloe. The other was for my parents. To my parents, I explained everything. I told them how sorry I was for the public humiliation that was about to unfold, but that it was the only way to expose the truth and protect them from further financial and emotional ruin. I promised to pay them back every cent they had lost. I told them I loved them and that I would be in touch when I was ready. To Chloe, the letter was much shorter. I placed the engagement ring on top of the single sheet of paper. I heard you and your friends talking at the hotel. I saw the video. I know everything. You wanted a show. I hope you enjoy it. I packed a single bag with my laptop, the hard drive, my passport, and a few changes of clothes. I looked around the hotel room, a generic, impersonal space that represented the last night of my old life. The man who had checked in yesterday was gone forever. I walked out without a backward glance. The morning of the wedding was a study in controlled chaos. I had to play my part for a few more hours. I went to the suite where my groomsmen and I were supposed to get ready. My best man, a childhood friend named Sam, was already there, pacing nervously. "Dude, where have you been? I've been calling you all morning. Your phone is off. Sorry, man." "Dead battery," I lied smoothly. "Just needed to clear my head. A little pre-wedding jitters." Sam clapped me on the shoulder, his face etched with genuine concern. "You okay? You look different, tired." I forced a smile. "I'm great. Just ready to get this over with and be married to the most amazing woman in the world." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I went through the motions of getting ready. I put on the ridiculously expensive tuxedo Chloe had insisted on. I let my father, who had arrived with my mother a few minutes later, help me with my tie, his hands surprisingly steady. He looked at me in the mirror, his eyes misty. "I'm so proud of you, son. You've become a good man." The guilt I felt in that moment was a sharp physical pain. He had no idea that his pride was about to be dragged through the mud in the most public way imaginable. My mother fussed over my collar, her face a mixture of joy and anxiety. "Please be happy, Alex. That's all I've ever wanted for you." "I will be, Mom. I promise." It wasn't a lie. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was on the path to real happiness. It was just a path that no one else could see yet. The plan was to leave at noon. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock. I had a 2-hour window to disappear before anyone would realize I was truly gone. At 11:30, I told my groomsmen I needed a minute alone. I went into the bedroom of the suite and placed the 2 letters on the unmade bed. I took one last look at myself in the mirror. The man staring back was a stranger in a tuxedo, his eyes holding a secret that was about to rock this entire town. I walked out of the bedroom, past my unsuspecting family and friends, and headed for the service elevator at the end of the hall. I didn't look back. As I drove away from the estate, my cheap rental car feeling like a getaway vehicle, I sent one final text to my cousin Leo. "It's a go. See you on the other side." Then, I threw my phone out the window, watching it shatter on the asphalt in my rearview mirror. I was untraceable. I was a ghost, and the haunting was about to begin. I drove for 2 hours, heading north with no particular destination in mind, just a desperate need for distance. I imagined the scene back at the estate, the initial confusion, the hushed whispers. Where's the groom? The growing panic, the bridesmaids checking the suite, the discovery of the letters. Chloe's beautiful, composed face crumbling into a mask of fury and disbelief. Her father, Richard, his carefully controlled world thrown into chaos. My own parents, their joy turning to horror and confusion as they read my letter. I felt a grim satisfaction mixed with a deep, aching sadness for the collateral damage I was causing. But this was a forest fire, and the only way to stop it from consuming me completely was to burn it all down first. The real show, however, was yet to come. I pictured the guests, all 300 of them, seated in the perfectly manicured gardens, the string quartet playing a gentle melody. I pictured Richard Harrington, his face a thundercloud, stepping up to the microphone to announce a delay, to try and salvage some shred of dignity from the situation. And then, I pictured the large screens on either side of the altar, the ones meant to show a live feed of the happy couple, flickering to life. I imagined the opening shot, the grainy cell phone video of his daughter, drunk and triumphant, raising a champagne bottle. To my sweet, boring golden retriever back home, the silence, the collective gasp, the dawning horror on the faces of the guests as they listened to her own words, her own voice, condemn her. I imagined the photos flashing on the screen, a montage of her infidelity, juxtaposed with the evidence of her financial deception, the $10,000 shopping spree, the $5,000 bar tab, all paid for with my family's dreams. The video would end, the screens would go black, and in the deafening silence, the truth would settle over the crowd like a shroud. There would be no wedding, there would be no happily ever after. There would only be the ugly, undeniable truth, exposed for all to see. Chloe didn't want a husband, she wanted an audience, and I had just given her the performance of a lifetime. A year later, I was sitting in a small cafe in a quiet coastal town 1,000 miles away from the life I had left behind. The salt-laced air was a constant, gentle reminder of my freedom. I had spent the past 12 months rebuilding myself from the ground up. I had used the money I'd saved, the money that was supposed to have been for my future with Chloe, to start my own small software development company. I worked from a small apartment that overlooked the ocean, my hours dictated by my own passion, not by someone else's expectations. It was a simple life, a quiet life, but it was mine. I had, of course, heard about the aftermath of what the tabloids had dubbed the wedding of the year. My cousin Leo had given me a blow-by-blow account a few weeks after the event. The chaos had been immediate and spectacular. The Harringtons had been instantly transformed from society darlings to objects of ridicule and scorn. Richard's business had taken a major hit as partners and clients, disgusted by the public display of his family's duplicity, had pulled their investments. Chloe had become a social pariah overnight. Her friends, including Tiffany and Madison, had immediately distanced themselves, claiming they had no idea about her deception. She had reportedly fled to Europe for a few months to escape the fallout, but her reputation was in tatters. According to the gossip sites, which I occasionally perused with a detached sense of curiosity, she was now living a much quieter, less glamorous life, her wings well and truly clipped. Marco, the ex-boyfriend, had also faced consequences. His own fiancée, a woman from another prominent family, had seen the video and promptly called off their engagement. It turned out that my small act of personal revenge had a much wider blast radius than I had anticipated. My own parents had been humiliated, as I had feared, but they had also been furious on my behalf. They had stood by me, telling anyone who would listen how proud they were of me for standing up for myself. After the initial shock wore off, they had used the experience to reevaluate their own lives, selling their house and using the money, along with the funds I had paid back to them, to travel the world, something they had always dreamed of doing. We spoke on the phone every week, our conversations closer and more honest than they had ever been. I had just finished a meeting with a new client when a woman approached my table. "Excuse me, are you Alex Davenport?" I looked up, my guard instantly on high. I had been careful to keep a low profile, but my company was starting to get some recognition, and my name was out there. The woman was a journalist from a national magazine. She had somehow tracked me down. "I've been wanting to tell your story for a long time," she said, her voice gentle but persistent. "A lot of people see you as a hero, you know." I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who got pushed too far." "But isn't that what a hero is?" she countered. "Someone who finds the courage to fight back when everyone expects them to surrender?" I thought about her question long after she had left. I had never seen myself as courageous. My actions had been born of desperation and rage. But maybe she was right. Maybe courage wasn't about the absence of fear, but about acting in spite of it. Maybe the bravest thing a person can do is to refuse to be a character in someone else's story and to start writing their own. Later that day, I received a forwarded email from my mother. It was from Chloe. It had been sent to my old email address, a digital graveyard I rarely visited. My mother had sent it with a simple note: "I thought you should see this. For closure." I hesitated for a long time before opening it. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear what she had to say, but curiosity and perhaps a need to finally close that chapter of my life won out. "Alex, I don't expect you to read this, and I certainly don't expect you to reply. I don't even know why I'm writing it, other than to say that what you did to me was cruel and unforgivable. You ruined my life. You destroyed my family. You humiliated me in front of everyone I have ever known. But you were right." I read the last 3 words again. "But you were right. I was everything you showed them I was. I was careless and cruel, and I took your love for granted. I didn't deserve you. I thought getting everything I wanted would make me happy, but it just made me empty. I have spent the last year trying to understand the person I was, the person who could be so casually destructive. I don't have any answers. I just know that the girl in that video is someone I no longer want to be. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you taught me something that no one else ever could, that actions have consequences, and that sometimes the only way to find yourself is to lose everything you thought you were. Chloe." I closed the email and stared out at the ocean, the waves crashing against the shore in a steady, rhythmic pattern. The anger I had held onto for so long was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. My revenge had never been about destroying her. It had been about saving myself. Her downfall was just a consequence of her own choices. I had simply been the one to hold up the mirror. I thought about the journalist's words, about being a hero. I still didn't feel like one. But as I sat there, in my new life, a life built on honesty and self-respect, I realized that I had done something heroic. I had saved that sweet, boring, golden retriever. I had set him free, and in doing so, I had finally learned how to be my own man.